Kenny Dillingham continues to add high-profile transfers to this team, and it proves they can get whoever they want.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with more transfer news. And man, it's cooking right now. And ASU and Kenny Dillingham, they are making stuff happen through the transfer portal. Unfortunately, we were not here yesterday. I appreciate everyone for the understanding, but we got to talk about these new transfers. I want to start our conversation with how ASU is getting whoever they want right now. But of course, I got to introduce you to these new transfers before we round out the show with how are they doing this? Is it sustainable what Kenny Dillingham is doing? But let's start the conversation with what's going on. Over the weekend, Kenny Dillingham managed to add 6 more players through the transfer portal. Keep in mind, from the time the portal opened up until this past weekend, ASU had added 6 players. So they doubled that between Sunday and Monday. We already talked about the 3 players they added on Sunday. I did not get a chance to talk about the players on Monday. Those players being wide receiver Jaren Hamilton, cornerback Nylon Green, and cornerback Kendrick Breedlove. Now, if you aren't aware, these are some former high-profile kids. Jaren Hamilton comes from Alabama. He is a former 4-star receiver. He just did not get to see the field. Nylon Green, that's a big name. Former 5-star recruit from a few years ago. 2-time national champion with Georgia. Spent last year with Purdue. He's coming here to Arizona State for his last year. And then Kendrick Breedlove, only a 3-star, but there's a lot of starting experience that he has. Although really interesting situation is he's still taking visits right now, even though he is committed to Arizona State. I'm really curious how Kenny Dillingham is going to feel about that, because I know that one of the things that has come with Kenny's culture building is that he wants guys that are here and guys that are bought in. When you commit, your word is your word. You shouldn't be backing out of that stuff. That's the way that Kenny Dillingham works and operates. It's the way that he wants this team to look. So how's that going to look? I have no idea. What I do know is that you are adding Nylon Green, a former 5-star, and Jaren Hamilton, a former 4-star, both of them who went to not just SEC programs, but premier SEC programs. These guys, I mean, they could have gone anywhere they wanted, right? Sure, they didn't see too much time starting while they were with their respective SEC programs, but there's a reason that they were recruited to that program in the first place. They had plenty of options, I'm sure, and they chose to come to Arizona State, and that should be incredibly noteworthy for all of us to see, is that these kids are choosing to come to Arizona State. And it's not the first time that ASU has brought in some of these high-profile guys, right? I mean, just this offseason, they still have 2 other 4-stars, former 4-stars, with wide receiver Noble Johnson and tight end Kamari Anderson. But let's look at the past. I mean, Kenny Dillingham has shown a history of this. His first season in 2023, he brought in Clayton Smith, former 5-star, Bram Walden, a former 4-star and a really high 4-star, and then Jake Smith and Jacob Conover, 2 former 4-stars. Last year's class, absolutely insane. Make of it what you will. Jeff Sims, was a former 4-star. Obviously, the big get was Sam Levitt, a former 4-star. But they also brought in a ton of other former 4-stars. You had Malik McClain, the wide receiver. You had Shimon Mateer, the tight end. You had Raleek Brown, who was a former super high 4-star / 5-star, depending on where you look. They loaded up the defense. Former 4-star defensive lineman. Zach Swanson and Jamon Tapp. You had tons of defensive backs, Miles Rouser, Cole Martin, Kamari Wilson, LT Welsh, all former 4-star guys. These high-profile players who could have gone wherever they wanted were choosing to go to Arizona State. And that's a really big deal. And it's something that we need to give a lot more credit to and understanding of. They don't have, excuse me, they don't have to come to Arizona State. I'm not saying that they're still getting offers from every single program in the country, but I don't think that guys like this are even entertaining coming to Arizona State prior to Kenny Dillingham. And look at the drastic difference you saw from 2023 to 2024. A ton of transfers in both those classes. There was like almost 50 transfers between those two classes. But you go from 4 kids in 2023 to 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 former 4-star / 5-star players. So what? You almost tripled what you had from former high-profile kids to commit to the school. And ASU has kept a pretty low profile right now. They only have 12 transfers coming in. They weren't planning to add a lot. Kenny Dillingham said between 8 to 9. I would not be surprised if they are finished right now with 12. But of those 12, 3 of them are former 4-stars. One of them is a former 5-star. So he's still showing that trend of we can get the people we want to get in this building. And it's not just about the high-profile guys, because a lot of the 3-star transfers who have come in have found very, very, very big roles for themselves. Like, they are just getting the players they want right now. And it's starting to get to a point where ASU, it feels like they can pick and choose who they want right now. They can look through, and there's so many people that are lining up to come and play at Arizona State. Keep in mind, they could have added a couple of more guys as well. Wide receivers Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch had both visited. Zachariah's brother Zion was a former 4-star when all of them were coming out of high school, and they didn't end up committing to Arizona State. And I mean, we don't know why. Maybe it was NIL related. Maybe they didn't think that they were a good fit. But what I'd like to point out with them is I don't think that they're even entertaining Arizona State as an option a handful of years ago. But yet Kenny Dillingham comes here. Look how quickly he turns around the program. Look at the culture that's being established, which we'll talk more about later. You see all of the positives that have come out of the Kenny Dillingham era in such a short amount of time. And it's not a wonder that they're getting these kids to buy in right now. And it's not a wonder that some of the biggest names in college football, when they were coming into the NCAA, are looking at Arizona State right now. And I'll tell you this too, it's going to impact recruiting for the freshmen. And ASU is already recruiting pretty well. They get some very quality 3-star kids. They had Jaden Rashada in their first year. He was a 4-star / 5-star, depending on where you looked. The next year you had Jason Brown and Jaden Fortier, 2 4-stars. This year, Cam Dyer and AJ Ea are coming in. Those are 4-star kids. They're recruiting at a really high rate right now. 2026, their first commit was a 4-star quarterback in Jake Fetty. They are at a rapid pace taking all this recruiting to a whole other level. It's special what we're seeing right now at Arizona State. And so much of it is because of what Kenny Dillingham has been able to provide. Now, granted, that has since been passed down to some of the leaders and the youngsters on this team. They have inherited that culture. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the show, though. This is special, what's going on in Arizona State. And I hope you guys realize that what they're doing right now is special. Former 4-star kids are flocking to this program. Former 5-star kids are entertaining, and some of them are committing to ASU. They are doing so many good things in Tempe right now. Kenny Dillingham at the forefront of it. He's been the change that ASU needed to start moving forward, prepare for the future, and build up this program at a rapid pace. Everything is avalanching at this point in time. But I do want to make sure that we are aware of these 3 guys who are coming in. Jaren Hamilton, Nylon Green, Kendrick Breedlove. I want to talk about them. I want to introduce you to them. I'm going to tell you the roles that they could find. Coming up next, this is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. And whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need all within your budget. I'm looking to get some new furniture. I've got some hand-me-downs in this house, and I am ready to get some fresh new things for myself. And they have a free, hassle-free delivery even for the larger items. They have a huge selection. It's stuff that not only fits my style, but it fits my budget. And their site is also really easy to navigate. I found everything I needed in no time. I've got stuff that I am waiting for my upcoming paycheck to be able to grab those for myself. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair, Wayfair.com, wayfair.com for what you need. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks to all of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let me introduce you to these guys because we can't just meet these dudes and assume we know everything about them. 3 guys coming in. Wide receiver Jaren Hamilton from Alabama. Cornerbacks Nylon Green and Kendrick Breedlove, both from Purdue. Jaren Hamilton, former 4-star from 2023. He has 3 more years of eligibility remaining for himself. He did not get to see the field in his 2 years at Alabama, so he gave it a shot. He just couldn't find his way out there with 2 different head coaches and offensive philosophies. They just preferred some other guys, and they've got some very good players at that program. You're not always going to break it. That's okay. So he's looking for a new role and a new place for opportunity. And I don't know very many places in college football that have more opportunity to start or at least see a big role at the wide receiver spot than Arizona State. We've got Jordan Tyson, Malik McClain, and a whole lot of question marks. There's some youngsters that I'm really interested in. There's already 2 transfers that are joining with Jalen Moss and Noble Johnson, but Jaren Hamilton can find himself a role. And the role that I think he can find, deep threat. I look at ASU right now, and I look at their wide receiver chart, and I just don't see someone that really stands out as he's going to take the top off the defense. And we didn't even really have that this year for ASU. Xavier Guillory was a pretty good deep threat for you. And I think that's the role that we could look for Hamilton to inherit. Now, granted, Guillory did end up being your number 1 receiver for the last 2 games of the year. And he also started the season as your wide receiver 1 on the depth chart. He was flat out a good player, but his role as a deep threat was very, very important. And someone needs to be able to step into that. And I think that that's what Jaren Hamilton could do for you. I don't think that Jalen Moss and I don't think that Noble Johnson are those kind of players for you, but Hamilton has that speed. There's some youngsters, Zachariah Sample, I almost said Zachariah Branch. Zachariah Sample could be a deep threat for you as well. And there's plenty of other guys that are intriguing for that. Derek Eusebio, someone I'm really interested in. But that's neither here nor there. Hamilton, this feels like your deep threat for the team. This feels like the receiver that can break the defense, open up everything underneath. Jordan Tyson has deep threat abilities, but you're going to want him all over the place. And the other guys that are here, like I said, I just don't think that they have the ability to stretch the field the way that Jaren Hamilton does. Let's go ahead and talk about these corners. Nylon Green, the former 5-star, 2-time national champion with Georgia. He's still a very good corner, and he had a productive season with Purdue. He was one of their starting corners last year, and I think that that's probably the role that we could see him take on with Arizona State now. is potentially a starting role. The role that I will predict for him is kind of a heavy rotation and your number 3 corner. I see the LT Welsh role for him. Welsh, we didn't really see too much of him to start the year, but by the end of the year, he found a really, really important niche role for the team. He was your third corner. He could come in and spare Javen Robinson and spare Keith Abney. And for a team that didn't have a true nickel corner because Cole Martin was injured and Shamari Simmons as a safety was able to step into that role and play magnificently, albeit, they didn't really have a true slot corner. And ASU didn't try to force anyone to do that. Shamari Simmons took over that role, but they didn't force him to be a slot corner. They allowed him to play his safety role, just closer to the line of scrimmage. And Nylon, don't get me wrong, I don't see him as a slot corner either. I think that's the other guy we're going to talk about in a second. But I see that LT Welsh role for him as the third corner on the team, someone who can spare Robinson and Abney to start outside, play outside. There's clearly potential here with him and just provide some good play for you. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see a ton of Nylon Green in the box score, but we end up looking back at the end of the year and we're like, yeah, no, he was really important because that was LT. He didn't have these eye-popping numbers in the box score. And again, he didn't really make an impact until later in the year. But we look back on the season and we're like, yeah, no, LT was very important for that stretch when ASU was able to get going before he was unfortunately dismissed from the team. Now, Kendrick Breedlove, that's someone that I think fills that slot role for you. And that would be my projected role for him. I look at Kendrick Breedlove and I see the starting nickel for this team. And again, I'm still really curious how everything's going to shake out for him and ASU. He was visiting Tennessee, if I remember seeing that correctly. So I don't know what the future holds there. But as of now, and assuming that he's still going to be with the team, there is pretty much a direct line for him to be the starting nickel. There's just not a lot of other guys that really fit the profile physically that you're looking. And he's just a good player. 5'11", 185 for what it's worth. And he feels like that guy for me. He's been all over the place. Started at Ole Miss, went to Colorado, was at Purdue this past year. He's coming off a great year with Purdue, though. 3 interceptions. This will be his last year of eligibility. Oh, it's also Nylon Green's last year of eligibility. I don't think I mentioned that. So Jaren Hamilton has 3 years. The 2 corners, Nylon Green and Kendrick Breedlove, have 1 year. But I see both of them finding opportunities to see the field very, very consistently in the secondary. And I think that Breedlove could find himself a starting role for the Sun Devils as that nickel corner for them, which they didn't have last year because Cole Martin got injured. So Shamari Simmons played in the nickel, but again, he still played his safety spot, which ended up being like so pivotal for the team. It was such a weapon that they had. And that's something I could see us get from Montana Warren or Adrian Wilson, who transferred to the program, is that third safety who could play nickel and stuff like that. But if you're looking for a true, like, by the definition, nickel corner, Kendrick Breedlove is that guy for me. Like I said, I think that all 3 of them, if they put the effort in, could find themselves as key players for ASU and replacing key players. I mean, think about it like this. I said Jaren Hamilton could be your deep threat. He could be the Xavier Guillory role. Guillory was like your number 3 receiver at worst last year. Hamilton could be that. I said Nylon Green could take on the LT Welsh role. Well, LT Welsh saw the field a lot last year, and he was one of your better coverage guys. And then Kendrick Breedlove. I said he could potentially be your starting nickel. And that would be what Cole Martin was supposed to be, but also taking over potentially for Shamari Simmons. 3 of the most important players for ASU last year, Xavier Guillory, LT Welsh, and Shamari Simmons. These 3 guys have the opportunity to fill those holes. And they have that opportunity to make lasting impacts too, not just like fill the roles and like, oh, it's a body out there. They have the ability to play really good football. So I'm interested. I also think my last closing thought here before we transition to the last part of the show, I think that those 3 additions is going to conclude the search for replacements at the 2 spots. Wide receiver needed a lot of addressing. You lost almost the whole room because of eligibility. But you had Malik McClain return. Obviously, Jordan Tyson is back. And you brought in 3 guys, Noble Johnson, Jalen Moss, and now Jaren Hamilton. I'd say you're done. I wanted 3 receivers through the transfer portal this offseason. We got 3. I think that's perfect. Corner, I know that we had added some depth at safety with Adrian Wilson. I still wanted an actual corner, and I even specifically said I would prefer a slot corner. Boom, got it. Kendrick Breedlove, there's your slot corner, and they added Nylon Green to take on a depth role as well. And corner is a very young position for ASU. So not only did you add 2 potential starters, but you added 2 veterans that are going to help the young guys develop more. So they addressed exactly what I wanted them to address. ASU is in a really good spot right now. I love these last 3 additions, and I think they're done, but they may not be done. But at this point, we got to round out the show, and I got to answer the biggest questions here. The first biggest question, how is Kenny doing this? Kenny doing this? And is this sustainable? That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, I got to talk to you about our friends over at Rocket Money. They're the best. They have already saved me a ton of money. They found some subscriptions that I was paying twice for that I didn't even realize I was doing. I also had stuff from years ago that I was still paying for that I didn't even realize I was paying for it. And Rocket Money, they hunted it down for me. They did it very, very quick. It's like having that personal assistant for your finances. And it's a personal finance app too. It's not just finding your unwanted subscriptions. It helps monitor your spending. It helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place: subscriptions, spending habits, even goals you want to hit this year, and helps you save some money. Rocket Money has over 5 million users. They have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. They're saving members up to $740 a year when you use all the app's premium features. I know I told you guys previously, my favorite part was the subscription tracker, but you know what? I've moved on. My favorite part about this app is that they'll go to bat for you and they will help lower your rates on some of your every month bills. It's fantastic, man. I'm going to be saving more money that way. They've got their goals feature too. I want to let you guys know that if you're struggling to save money like I am, they are going to automatically set money aside for your future. They got it all taken care of for you. So there's no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. I got 2 questions as we round out this show. Question number 1, how is Kenny Dillingham doing all of this in such a short amount of time? I mean, he's going into his 3rd year as a head coach. This is it's only his 3rd recruiting cycle too, I guess. That's weird. It feels like this is his 4th or 5th at this point. And you would think it is because of how quickly everything's gone. Look at how quickly ASU has been able to recruit these kids. They're getting 4-star freshmen at a pretty solid rate considering where you were. And they're talking to 5-star kids who are considering the program. They are considering Arizona State, if you would. Now you've got these transfers that are coming in, and they're about it. They're like, yeah, I love what's being built here at Arizona State. I love what I'm seeing. I love how quickly everything's coming together. And the biggest reason why that Kenny Dillingham has been able to do all of this, to answer the question, it's simple. Culture establishment. Kenny Dillingham came in here to this program. He had goals in mind. The first biggest goal, he said, is he wants to activate the Valley. Now, there was a lot of stuff that came with that. It was getting these Arizona high school kids to stay home. It was getting the fans invested, getting the boosters to jump in, getting the students to invest more. That was step one. Step two, creating a culture at this program. And what does that look like for ASU? Well, I don't think we've seen anything like this in a long time. This culture that Kenny Dillingham has established, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into it. There's accountability. There is determination. There's a huge sense of brotherhood. That one, to me, that's got to be the largest priority with establishing this culture. He wants these players to come together and to build those relationships that last off the field, and they last a lifetime. He wants these kids to make lifelong relationships with each other. It's not just about going to college for 4 years or 5 years and playing football with these guys that you never talk to again. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Kenny Dillingham wants these guys to still be talking to each other in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And he's passed that down to the players. Kenny Dillingham came in. He said, this is what it looks like. Let's get it started. He got it started. And now it's the players' culture. Kenny Dillingham had the blueprint. He said, this is what I want. This is the expectation that I want to see from my team in my locker room. I want you guys to build this. And they built it. And you've got these leaders in this locker room that are at the forefront of managing this team. Now it's the reason why so many guys are returning as well, is they love the culture that they have established. And it's why people are flocking to ASU. It's why these transfers are so interested in coming here, is because of what they're building. Because Arizona State football is more than just football right now. It's these guys who are forging friendships with each other. It's more than just time on the gridiron for 60 game minutes. It's more than spring practices. It's more than off-season training and the weight room and the film room and everything else. It's going out with these guys. It's hanging out during the summer, traveling, meeting family members and friends, and playing video games and going to the gym together outside of football and doing all of these things. And they're doing it. They're friends with each other. They're not just teammates. They're friends. They're brothers. This culture, it's blossoming. And it happens so quickly. And now we're seeing the benefits of it. We are reaping the rewards of building this culture. Everyone wants to come to Arizona State, and everyone wants to stay at Arizona State. You know, it would be really, really easy for these youngsters to see the amount of transfers that are coming in every year. There was almost 50 transfers in the first 2 years of the Kenny Dillingham era. He brought in 12 more guys. I think they're done. They may not be done. It'd be so easy for these redshirt freshmen and these true freshmen and these redshirt sophomores to be discouraged and say, well, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to see the football field. You know, I'm going to have to sit behind these guys who have been around forever. But they don't. So many of these guys are staying, and they're embracing the fact that they're going to have to earn their time out here. They're bought in to what Kenny Dillingham is throwing out there right now. They love where they're at. And they know that they have the opportunity to play. It's not like they'll never see the field, but they know that this is not going to be given to you. It doesn't matter if you're a 5-star. It doesn't matter if you're an O-star or a walk-on. You have to earn what's here. And while you're earning it, you're going to be working harder than you would anywhere else. And you're going to be making relationships. Because when they start getting down in the dumps, they got those guys to pick them right back up. It's a family. It's a family that they have in Arizona State right now. It is so beyond. Do you guys realize how special and unique this is from decades of Arizona State Sun Devils football? We've seen good relationships, sure. We've seen guys that still talk to each other, sure. That typically happens when you spend time in college with people. I've never seen it like this, where everyone is integrated with each other. Everyone is bought in. The team leaders are hanging out with these 17, 18-year-old true freshmen. They're building relationships and bonds with each other. This is about the players, not Kenny Dillingham, not the coaches. The continuity there, yeah, super important. But how was Kenny doing this? Well, he gave that responsibility to the youngsters. The last question, is it sustainable? Well, yeah, it's very sustainable. As long as Kenny stays here and as long as the younger players can inherit the roles of the veterans when the veterans move on, yeah, it's entirely sustainable. This isn't smoke and mirrors and talk is cheap and everything like that. We're seeing the buy-in. And with the young guys who are willing to stay and compete, they are going to learn so much from a mental standpoint, not a football standpoint. They're going to grow into men, leaders, and they're going to inherit this team. So, yeah, when Xavier Alford is gone, when Keyshawn Elliott is gone, when who else would I throw in there? When Shimon Mateer is gone, when Miles Rouser is gone, those leaders that have been here for a long time, when they're gone, they're going to pass it to the youngsters who will inherit it and continue to pass it. The culture that Kenny provided has been instilled, and the players have taken it. That's how Kenny is doing this. That's why this is sustainable, because it's not Kenny Dillingham by himself. It's the team. It's the culture. And the culture that is established, it's going to be here for a while. It's the key to bringing it's the key to bringing in veterans. It's the key to having the youth want to stay. It's the key to future recruiting classes getting better and better and better. Because it doesn't matter who comes in. It doesn't matter if it's 30 transfers or if it's 5 transfers. Everyone that's here is focused on competing, and they're focused on building relationships with each other. When you've got all of that cooking for you, you're going to be hard to stop. What do you guys think? What do you think of these transfers that are coming in? What roles do you see them playing? And what are your thoughts on this culture that ASU has built to this point in time? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. And I also want to extend my gratitude to everyone for their patience and their understanding while my family is going through the loss of a loved one. I could not continue to do this without knowing that you guys are supporting me. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart for sticking with me. We're going to be back on schedule. We're going to be better than ever. We still got a lot to talk about, though, guys. I have to keep pushing back season game balls, stats that are defining the year, because we have so much to talk about. And that's why you got to turn on those notifications, and why it's never been a better time to subscribe to the channel, because I constantly have stuff to talk about. I can't even get to the content I want to talk about because we got to keep you up to date on everything. There's basketball going on too, by the way. They are on life support if they want to make it to the NCAA tournament. So I'll keep you posted with all of that stuff. I'll catch you guys next time, though. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.